The most powerful government on Earth just accused a man almost no American has ever heard of. He doesn't do interviews, he doesn't post, there is barely a photograph of him. But the AI model his company released shook chip stocks and pulled Washington to a press podium within days. The charge? That he didn't build it, that he lifted it from an American lab. And here's what nobody expected. The accusation didn't slow his company down at all, it made it more valuable. So understand who they're actually accusing. America built this man. Carnegie Mellon handed him a PhD in 4 years in a program that regularly breaks people over 6. Google and Meta trained him inside their own labs. Apple came after him personally and offered him something they offer almost nobody. He turned all of it down, got on a plane, and started a company with 2 friends from his college rock band. But none of that is the real story. The real story starts on the worst day of his career. A rival erased 2 years of his work in a single weekend, and what he did in the days that followed is something almost no founder on Earth would have the stomach to do. That decision is the reason Washington is saying his name out loud today. And it's a decision you can borrow. To understand why Washington is worried, you have to understand what's actually being fought over. It isn't bragging rights, it's the plumbing. Every app, every startup, every enterprise tool running on AI has to plug in to somebody's model. Whoever supplies that model collects the rent on the entire industry for years. For a long time, that was an American business: OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, Meta. Then Chinese labs started giving their models away, and something broke. By the middle of this year, Chinese models were reportedly handling close to half of the AI usage inside American companies. Not Chinese companies, American ones. A couple of years earlier, that number was around 4%. So who is the man at the center of it? Zhilin. He got into Tsinghua University, which is essentially China's MIT, and enrolled in thermal engineering, heat transfer, turbines, pipes. The man whose model would eventually shake American chip stocks was on track to spend his life studying how heat moves through metal. Then he read a novel, mid-degree, and switched his major to computer science. Most competitive university in the country, years already invested, and he threw it out because a story made him feel a different life was available. Most people get that feeling and go to work the next day like nothing happened. He moved. He also started a rock band there. Sounds irrelevant? It isn't. 2 people from that band later signed the founding documents of a company worth tens of billions of dollars. But the name you really need from those years belongs to his academic advisor, a professor called Ji Tang. Because Ji Tang went on to help build Jipu AI, known internationally as Z.AI. Today, it's one of the largest AI labs in China, publicly listed, backed by the state, and one of Moonshot's direct competitors. Its open image model got called the open source answer to Google's Nano Banana, and it was trained end-to-end on Huawei chips, made in China, with no American hardware in the loop at all. Read that again, because it's the whole geopolitical story in one sentence. The chip controls were supposed to be the choke point. They built around it. And that relationship isn't a coincidence. China's AI industry didn't come from strangers meeting on the internet. It came out of a handful of classrooms where these people were already sitting next to each other. They were lab mates before they were billion-dollar rivals. If this is landing for you, do me a favor. Hit like, subscribe to the channel, and stick around. We tell stories like this every single day. Because now, Zhilin gets on a plane to the United States and walks into the 2 most powerful AI research labs in the world as an intern. And before he finishes his PhD, he publishes the ideas that half the industry is standing on right now, including possibly the models he's now accused of stealing. He landed in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, at Carnegie Mellon University. Understand what that place is. Machine learning as a serious academic field was practically built inside those buildings. A PhD there normally takes 5, 6, sometimes 7 years. People burn out. People quit. He finished in 4. And look at who was standing over his shoulder while he did it. His first advisor was Ruslan Salakudinov, who later became Apple's director of AI research. His second was William Cohen, who went on to become a principal scientist at Google DeepMind, the lab behind Gemini. A Chinese graduate student handed the frontier of the field by the people actively drawing it. Salakhutdinov has described him publicly in 2 words: absolutely brilliant. Not promising, not hardworking, absolutely brilliant. And Yang wasn't only in a classroom. While still a student, he interned at Google Brain, then at Meta. 2 of the largest technology companies in human history opened their research labs to him before he'd finished his thesis. Now, this is where most people say America taught him everything he knows. That's not what happened, and the difference matters enormously for what comes later. He didn't just absorb, he contributed. Still a PhD student, he co-authored 2 papers called Transformer XL and XLNet. They sound like technical noise. They are not. Back then, AI models had a memory problem. They could only see a small window of text at a time. Imagine reading a novel through a mail slot. You understand 1 paragraph perfectly, but by page 300 you have no idea who anybody is. Transformer XL attacked that directly, giving models a way to carry information forward past the edge of that window. XLNet went after how a model learns language in the first place. When it was published, it went head-to-head with Google's own flagship model, the system powering a huge share of Google search. A graduate student on a student visa outperforming the flagship system of the largest search company on Earth. And every time you paste a long document into an AI and ask it to summarize it, or ask it questions about what's inside, you're using the descendants of ideas he helped publish before he turned 28. Long memory, long context, hold that thread because it becomes the product his entire company gets famous for. Now put yourself in his position. PhD in record time, Google and Meta on the resume, papers the whole field is citing. You are, by any measure, one of the most employable young researchers alive. And the offers come, including one from a senior executive at Apple who reported directly to Tim Cook. They wanted him badly enough to make him an offer built specifically to remove the single obstacle that usually kills these conversations. And he still said no. Let's talk about why, because that answer is worth money to you. Here's the offer, as his own advisor has described it publicly. Apple didn't just want to hire him. A senior executive went after him personally. And then Apple did something companies almost never do. They told him he could take the job and stay in China. Understand what that means. The single biggest friction point for a foreign researcher in America is paperwork, the visa lottery, the years of uncertainty. Apple looked at that obstacle and simply deleted it. Apple money, Apple resume, no relocation, no visa gamble. And he said no. So why? The answer isn't political. Yang said that if he didn't at least try building his own company, he would regret it for the rest of his life. Years later, Salakhutdinov's response to that was 6 words: "I respect that." And he was right. Look at what actually happened inside that decision. He wasn't comparing a salary to a salary. He was comparing his life at 33 with the company to his life at 63 without it. Jeff Bezos calls that the regret minimization framework. Before leaving a comfortable finance job to go sell books on the internet, he projected himself forward to 80 and asked which choice he'd regret less, not which one paid more. And notice the wording, because this part is easy to miss. He didn't say, "I know I'll succeed." He said he had to try. That's a much lower bar, and a much more honest one. And here's the part that gets skipped constantly. Back in China, he didn't immediately start his own company. He went and worked inside China's biggest AI programs first, Huawei's large model effort, and a national-scale project run out of Beijing. Which means before he planted his own flag, he'd already learned the terrain, how China funds AI, where the computing power sits, how you train an enormous model when nobody will sell you unlimited chips. Then ChatGPT landed, and the whole world tilted. So he founded Moonshot AI with 2 old schoolmates from Tsinghua, one of them the lead guitarist from his band. And the name tells you who he still was. In Chinese, the company is literally called Dark Side of the Moon, after his favorite Pink Floyd album. A multi-billion-dollar AI lab named after a rock record. Underneath it sat one belief he repeats in interview after interview. Don't reach for a clever trick, when raw scale will solve the problem for you. That's the operating manual for everything this company has shipped since. If this is landing for you, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and come back tomorrow. We do stories like this every day. Because now we reach the part where it almost ended. 7 months after founding, they shipped their first product, an AI assistant with the longest memory of anything commercially available on the planet. Within 2 years, it was the third most used chatbot in China, top 3 in the most brutal product market on Earth. And then, over a single weekend, a rival lab shipped something that knocked them from 3rd place to 7th. 2 years of work, gone by Friday. What he did next is the reason this video exists. 3rd place to 7th, overnight. A rival Chinese lab called DeepSeek released a model that didn't compete, it detonated. It rewired the entire Chinese AI landscape in days, and Moonshot took one of the hardest hits of anyone. Picture spending 2 years climbing a mountain on foot in the cold and looking over to see someone building an elevator right next to you. Here's what companies normally do in that moment. They protect what's left. They go quiet. They cut costs, stop taking risks, and slowly disappear. Yang Zhilin did the opposite. He built a brand new model called Kimi K3, and then he gave it away. Slow down here, because this is the hinge of the entire story. OpenAI and Anthropic keep their best models closed. You get the finished dish. You never get the recipe. Open weights means Moonshot handed out the recipe. A developer in Ohio, a university in Germany, a rival company across town. Anyone could download the actual model, run it on their own machines, and build a business on top of it. No licensing fee, no permission, no phone call. Think about the nerve that takes. You've just been humiliated in your home market, and your response is to hand your best asset to everyone who beat you. Under the hood, it was a trillion parameters, with only a small fraction switching on for any single task. Less one giant brain firing at once, more a company where only the right specialists get pulled into each meeting. The reaction was immediate. Within a day, it was the fastest downloaded model on Hugging Face, the place the entire global developer community goes to grab new models. That's thousands of engineers independently deciding on the same afternoon that this was worth their time. And then there was the bill. Running a full benchmark suite through it cost around 27 cents. The same job through OpenAI's GPT models cost roughly double. Through Anthropic's Claude, more than 4 times as much. So if you're a 2-person startup or a solo developer building something at night, which one are you reaching for? That's the quiet part the headlines keep missing. This race was never only about who's smartest, it's about who's smart enough, cheap enough, and open enough that the whole world starts building on top of you by default. Because once 10,000 companies wire your model into their products, you stop being a competitor. You become infrastructure. And Moonshot didn't take a victory lap. Over the following year, they shipped 5 more major upgrades, roughly 1 every 2 months. Deeper reasoning, better tool use, a coding version aimed straight at a market Anthropic had already proven was enormous after revealing its own coding product had crossed $1 billion in annual revenue. 5 serious releases in under a year, faster than any closed lab on Earth managed in the same stretch. Remember that pace. It becomes the single most important fact in this entire story later on. 18 months earlier, beaten so badly most people assumed the company was finished. Now setting the pace for the entire open-source AI world, with American developers pulling his models down by the million. And while that was happening, the largest companies in China were quietly pouring billions into this one man's bet. This is where the story stops sounding like a scrappy startup and starts sounding like a bet placed by the largest companies on the planet. Moonshot was 6 months old, no flagship product, 3 founders, and a plan. The first round valued the whole company at roughly $300 million, led by the Chinese arm of Sequoia, the same firm lineage that backed Apple, Google, and Airbnb. Then Alibaba stepped in with more than $1 billion, pushing the valuation 8 times higher in about 4 months. And Alibaba wasn't being generous. Think of it as China's Amazon crossed with Google. When a company that size writes $1 billion check, that's a calculated bet on who matters for the next decade. Then came Tencent, China's answer to Meta, the company behind WeChat. Now pause and look at that table. Alibaba and Tencent are bitter rivals. They fight over payments, shopping, cloud, gaming, media. Their platforms have literally blocked each other's links. And they both quietly bet on the same 30-something founder. Then came the round that made Washington sit up straight, bringing in China Mobile, a state-linked telecom giant, one of the largest carriers in the world. So look at who's around that table: private tech giants, global venture firms, and the state itself. That round pushed Moonshot past $20 billion. And Yang told his investors exactly where the money was going. Not marketing, not offices, not headcount. GPUs, the specialized chips AI models are trained on, and the single most contested resource in this industry. He was raising money to buy the ability to train one specific model he hadn't announced yet. Hold that thought, because that unannounced model ends up on the front page of every newspaper in the world. But here's the number that actually matters and has nothing to do with valuations. When a frontier-class model becomes free to download, the price of intelligence collapses for everyone. Chinese open models now account for close to 1/3 of all AI usage worldwide, while representing under 4% of what the world spends on it. Read that again: 1/3 of the work, 4% of the money. Alibaba's open model family alone has spawned well over 180,000 derivative models built by developers around the world. And American companies are adopting them, not out of politics, out of arithmetic. When the open option is 60 to 90% cheaper and close enough in quality, the finance department makes that call, not the engineers. That's the real threat, and it isn't military, it's margin. You cannot charge premium prices for something your competitor is handing out for free. Every closed American lab is now trying to justify a price tag against a rival whose price tag is zero. And notice the timing on every one of those funding rounds. They all happened after the humiliation, after everyone assumed Moonshot was finished. The money didn't arrive because he was winning. It arrived because of how he behaved while he was losing. Investors weren't buying a leaderboard position. They were buying a man who gave away his best asset at his weakest moment, then outshipped every closed lab on Earth for the next 12 months. Track records don't get built during your good months. And $20 billion was not the ceiling. Within about 2 months, that number would nearly double, because he was about to walk onto the biggest stage in the chip industry and show the world what all those GPUs had been building.
NVIDIA's GTC. If you don't follow the chip world, that's one of the biggest stages in technology. It's where NVIDIA, the company making the hardware nearly all modern AI runs on, sets the agenda for the industry. And the person walking out onto it wasn't an American CEO in a hoodie. It was Zhilin. Standing on NVIDIA's own platform, in front of NVIDIA's own audience, unveiling a model built to go head-to-head with the best America has ever produced. Kimi K3. The specs alone are enough to stop you. 2.8 trillion parameters, a context window of 1 million tokens, meaning it can hold several full-length novels in its head at once and still track a detail from Chapter 1. And it doesn't just read text, it sees images too. And once again, fully open, the largest open-weight AI model ever released. Bigger than anything DeepSeek had shipped, bigger than any open model on Earth. Here's the part that made people put down their coffee. Artificial Analysis, one of the most respected neutral benchmarking groups in the field, scored Kimi within about 3 points of Anthropic's flagship, the best closed model in the world. Not in the same neighborhood, in the same tier. And on one blind head-to-head coding leaderboard where developers vote on results without knowing which model produced them, Kimi took first place outright, ahead of Anthropic, ahead of OpenAI. An open Chinese model, free to download, beating the most expensive systems in America at their own game. Even Elon Musk publicly said it was impressive, no caveats attached. And true to form, Moonshot priced it at a fraction of what the closed labs charge for the same volume of work. The reaction wasn't subtle. Tech stocks dipped, chip indexes wobbled, the kind of market ripple normally reserved for announcements coming out of San Francisco. Inside China, it went nuclear.
A hashtag that roughly translates to Tsinghua Genius shakes US stocks pulled more than 30 million views in a day. Demand got so intense that within 48 hours, Moonshot had to pause new subscriptions just to keep the servers standing. Think about the distance covered here. A year and a half earlier, this company was 7th place at home. Now it had built an open model matching the most advanced closed systems on the planet and handed it to the world. That should be where the story ends. Underdog wins, roll credits. Except 6 days later, someone stepped up to a podium in Washington. The director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, effectively the president's top science advisor, accused Moonshot AI by name of covertly copying an American frontier model to build K3, specifically Anthropic's flagship. And to understand whether that accusation holds, you need to understand one word almost nobody explains properly: distillation. It's a real, legitimate, completely standard AI training technique. Here's the plain version. You take a very powerful model, ask it millions of questions, and collect the answers. Then you train a second model on those pairs, and it learns to imitate the first one's behavior at a fraction of the size and cost. Labs do this constantly, including on their own models. It's how most small, fast, cheap models get built. It isn't illegal, and it isn't exotic. What Washington described was more specific, an internal platform built to run that process against American models at industrial scale, rotating between access methods to avoid detection. Questions were also raised about how Moonshot obtained restricted NVIDIA chips, and the Treasury Department followed almost immediately, floating sanctions. Moonshot rejected all of it, saying K3's gains came from original changes to the model's underlying architecture. China's embassy called the claims unfounded. And I'm not going to tell you who's right. Nobody outside Moonshot's own servers actually knows, and no evidence has been made public. But there's one number everybody keeps circling, and it cuts in both directions. Anthropic's flagship had been briefly taken offline. When it came back, Kimi K3 launched 15 days later. 15 days. That gap is the entire reason the accusation was made, because how does anyone match a frontier model that fast? Now, run the clock forward instead of backward. Even if you assume the harvesting happened exactly as described, everything else still has to fit inside those same 15 days. Generate the training data. Train a 2.8 trillion parameter model, a process measured in weeks and months even on the largest GPU clusters on Earth. Evaluate it, safety test it, price it, build the infrastructure, and put your founder on NVIDIA's stage with finished slides. In 15 days. That's not a defense of anyone, it's arithmetic. Whatever K3 is, the overwhelming bulk of it existed long before those 15 days began, which is exactly what he told his investors a year earlier, when he said the money was going into GPUs to train one unannounced model. That's what makes this genuinely unresolved. So what happened after the accusation? The money got faster. Daily sales reportedly surged at least 6 times over. Within days of being accused by the most powerful government on Earth, Moonshot closed a round valuing it above $30 billion. It had been at 20. It's now in talks that could push it near 50, while preparing to list publicly in Hong Kong. Sit with that. An accusation of industrial-scale theft with sanctions attached did nothing to slow the capital down. Either investors don't believe it, or they've decided it doesn't change the math because the product works and customers don't ask where it came from. I'll let you decide which of those is more interesting. And through all of it, young Zhilin has said almost nothing. No press tour, no podcast circuit. He has never responded to the accusation at all. Now, zoom out, because this is bigger than one man. The United States still spends something like 23 times more on AI than China does. And the gap keeps closing anyway, not by matching dollar for dollar, but by moving faster, opening things up, and pricing so aggressively that adoption happens before anyone can react. So let's finish where this actually turned. Not the NVIDIA stage, not the billions, the moment he fell from 3rd place to 7th. Because most people, the moment they get hurt, choose safety. You protect what's left, you stop taking swings. He did the opposite. At the exact point he looked weakest, he gave away the one thing companies never let go of. And there's a strange symmetry in it. That same openness is the only reason the accusation can ever be tested. He published the weights. Anyone on Earth can look inside. So here's the thing worth carrying out of this. Being ahead is not the same as being strong. Being ahead just means you haven't been tested yet. The lead never belongs to whoever's in front today. It belongs to whoever keeps moving after they've been knocked flat, because that's the only moment that reveals what someone is actually made of. So if this one landed, don't let it disappear into the feed. Follow the channel and send it to a friend who'd get a kick out of this story too. Then leave me a comment. Tell me which side you land on, and who you want next. Another founder, another country, another story moving faster than the people in charge realize. I'll see you in the next one.